Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to add the next 20 creature cards with mana values of 3 into our Momir Vig Cube. Thank you for choosing MTG Burgeoning for your Magic the Gathering content. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and consider becoming a subscriber. Doing so supports the channel and makes you eligible for our various subscriber rewards series. If you would like to support the channel further, then click the link to our Patreon page in the description below. There you can join our ongoing Pack Wars series as a 1-month supporter or ongoing member. Or try joining Pack Wars for free by commenting on every MTG Burgeoning video in a month. We strive to offer creative rewards through our various Patreon tiers. So if Pack Wars isn't for you, then something else will be. Links to our content and various subscriber rewards series can be found in the description below. Send us an email, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We are your channel for all things magic. Hello, MTG That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another installment of our ongoing Momir Vig Cube series. If you're unfamiliar with the goals or purpose of the series, then you can search in the description below for a link to MTG Burgeoning's introduction to the Momir Vig Cube. And while you're down there fishing through the description, you can also click a link to Cube Cobra, where you can see the entire contents of the cube as it stands right now. So for today, 20 creatures with CMCs of 3 heading right into the cube, and we're starting off with a doozy. Back to the time of the Amonkhet block, we have Ramyanap Excavator, a 2/3 Naga Cleric that allows us to play lands from our graveyard. Why is that so valuable? Well, each time we so choose to summon a token copy of a creature from the Momir Vig Cube, we must discard a land from our hand to do so. We also must play lands from our hand in order to generate the mana to activate through the avatar. So we can play those lands from our graveyard without fear of running out of gas by playing them, getting them back onto the battlefield, drawing another land. Ramyanap Excavator is going to end up becoming the #1 3-drop in the entire cube. Creature number 2, mono black, we're going for Ravenous Harpy, a 1/2 flying harpy. We can pay a generic mana and sacrifice another creature to put a +1/+1 counter on Ravenous Harpy. So what we're going to have here is a creature that allows us to have a sacrifice outlet, which if we're blocking down a creature and we're going to lose that anyways in combat, let's sacrifice it, put a +1/+1 counter on this evasive creature, and eventually start swinging some haymakers at our opponents. Remember, each player begins with 24 life in Momir Vig Cube, and with the right number of creatures, that number could come down very quickly by turning a juiced-up Ravenous Harpy sideways and sending it into combat. Back to mono green, we have Ravenous Slime, a 1/1 ooze. Ravenous Slime cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. If a creature an opponent controls would die, instead we exile it, and we put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to that creature's power on Ravenous Slime. So I think if you are fortunate enough to summon a copy of this creature to your side of the battlefield, you just keep that Ravenous Slime in the background, allowing some creatures that our opponents control to die, and let's get that bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we can finally send that bad boy into combat and crush our opponents. All right, creature number 4 is a colorless edition, and it is Relic Golem, a 6/6 golem for 3 mana. It's a 6/6 for 3, so you know there must be some terrible drawback. Relic Golem can't attack or block unless an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So for the purposes of that right now, if we are discarding a land every time we summon a creature from the Momir Vig Cube, we're going to need to wait until an opponent has at least 8 lands in the graveyard. And honestly, with the way that this cube is constructed, the game may be over before we even make it to that point. Good thing that Relic Golem has a built-in mill ability. We pay 2 generic mana and turn it sideways, and target player mills 2 cards. So with just a couple of activations through that ability, Relic Golem should be able to send its 6/6 artifact body into combat. Reaching the 1/4 point, our first mono red edition, we have Relic Robber, a 2/2 Goblin Rogue with haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player will create a 0/1 colorless Goblin Construct artifact creature token with this creature can't block. And at the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to you. You can send it into combat, but it's a 0/1, and without the risk of taking any surprise instant speed power buffing, because that doesn't happen here in the Momir Vig Cube, this is all creatures all the time. Relic Robber, under the right conditions, we could really look at being a potential win condition from the 3 spot. Creature number 6, back to mono green, we have Renegade Krasis, a 3/2 beast mutant with the Evolve mechanic. Now, Evolve is going way back to the time of the Return to Ravnica block. Whenever a creature ETBs under our control, if that creature has a higher power or toughness than this creature, we'll put a +1/+1 counter on Renegade Krasis. And whenever Renegade Krasis evolves, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it. There is a +1/+1 counter sub-theme woven into the Momir Vig Cube, and if you are fortunate enough to get a couple of other creatures to synergize with Renegade Krasis' Evolve ability, it should only be a matter of time until you end up just overwhelming the board. Creature number 7, our first mono-white edition, we have Righteous Valkyrie, a 2/4 flying angel cleric. Whenever another angel or cleric ETBs under your control, gain life equal to that creature's toughness. There are a number of angels and clerics in the Momir Vig Cube, so it's not a guarantee that this will always trigger, but the incidental life gain that this angel provides could be instrumental in winning the game, because again, in a format of Momir Vig where every player begins with 24 life, and victory is generally won through combat, a few additional life points could be the difference between winning and losing. And as an additional bonus, as long as you have at least 7 life or more than your starting life total, creatures you control get +2/+2. So 31 or more life, and you're going to have a nice +2/+2 anthem provided by Righteous Valkyrie. Back to mono green as it continues to dominate this video, we have Rishkar Pima Renegade, a 2/2 elf druid. When it ETBs, we put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Each creature we control with a counter on it has a Llanowar elf ability. Tap to add a green mana to your mana pool. Again, this is just another example of the +1/+1 counter strategy woven into this cube. In this instance, however, it will allow you to ramp past your opponents and summon bigger and more powerful creatures from the cube way ahead of curve. Alright, creature number 9, we're going back to mono white. We have Rock Charger, a 1/3 bird with flying. Whenever it attacks, target attacking creature without flying gains flying until end of turn. Evasion will be key to winning a game of Momir Vig, and any creatures that have evasion are very, very valuable, and any creatures that provide it are equally valuable. So dropping down Rock Charger on your side of the battlefield for the investment of 3 mana, that could go a long way to claiming victory in that game. Reaching the halfway point, we have another mono-white creature. This time it's Rock Egg, a 0/3 bird with defender. When Rock Egg dies, we create a 3/3 white bird creature token with flying. So we definitely have a blocker here that we just want to make sure it can die. And once it does, we have a pretty decent size flyer that we can send into combat. Beginning the second half of this video with creature number 11, back to mono green, we have Root Weaver Druid, a 2/1 elf druid that when it ETBs, each opponent may search their library for up to 3 basic land cards. They each put one of those cards onto the battlefield tapped under our control, and the rest onto the battlefield tapped under their control. Then each player who searches their library this way shuffles it. So there's going to be a little bit of, let's say, politicking going on. If a player player summons a copy of Root Weaver Druid to their side of the battlefield because of the ability to ramp up their own mana, would they risk ramping us up even further? I don't know. It's going to be one of those things that's most likely going to be game and battlefield dependent. Creature number 12, mono black, Rotting Regisaur, 7/6 zombie dinosaur. At the beginning of your upkeep, we discard a card. So the drawback of just investing 3 mana into your avatar to get a 7/6 means you're going to discard a card at the beginning of your upkeep. Is that going to be a hindrance, or is that going to be worth it? Well, how long can Rotting Regisaur be chump blocked, and how long can we sustain cards in our hand before it starts to become a real detriment? Remember, not every creature in the cube is going to be uber helpful or uber powerful. Back-to-back mono black editions. This time it's Royal Assassin, a 1/1 human assassin. Tap to destroy target tapped creature. This is going to be one of the best and purest forms of removal in the cube, and a very, very valuable creature to have if you're fortunate enough to summon a copy of it. Mono Black continues its trend with its 3rd consecutive edition. Here we have Ruin Raider, a 3/2 orc pirate with the raid mechanic. At the beginning of our end step, if we attack with a creature this turn, we reveal the top card of our library and put that card into our hand. We lose life equal to the card's converted mana cost. Now, because this is Momir Vig, that card is always going to be a land, so we will never lose any life. So we can further change Ruin Raider's text to read, at the beginning of our end step, if we attack with a creature, draw a card. Next up, the 3/4 mark of this video has been reached, and we're back once more with mono green. And we have Runic Armasaur, a 2/5 dinosaur that whenever an opponent activates an ability of a creature or land that isn't a mana ability, we may draw a card. Now, every land is going to be a basic land, so we can't look to have that ability trigger the Runic Armasaur. However, there should be quite a number of activated and triggered abilities on creatures that are going to ETB, and each time they do, Runic Armasaur will allow us to draw a card. Creature number 16, our first monocolored edition here. We have Serulf, Realm Eater, a 3/3 wolf. Whenever a permanent an opponent controls is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, Serulf gets a +1/+1 counter. At the beginning of our upkeep, not upcreep, if Serulf has 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, we may remove all of them, and if we do, we'll exile each other non-land permanent with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of counters removed this way. With enough creatures entering the battlefield, putting with enough permanents leaving our opponent's sides of the battlefield and hitting the graveyard, Serulf could get big enough that we could just simply remove all the counters and exile everything, except for basic lands, of course. All right, back to mono green. We have Scourge of Skolavale. It's a Hydra. It's got trample. It comes into play with 2 +1/+1 counters, and we can tap it to sacrifice another creature to put a number of +1/+1 counters on Scourge of Skolavale equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. With the right number of creatures on your side of the battlefield, the Scourge could be considered a win condition, particularly because of the evasiveness of trample. Back to mono green once more, we have Scute Swarm. It is a 1/1 insect with the landfall mechanic. Whenever a land ETBs under your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If we control at least 6 lands, that's going to instead be a copy of Scute Swarm instead. If you've had the pleasure of playing with this, or if you've experienced the trauma of playing against it, then either way you know how powerful Scute Swarm is and how easily it could just completely take over a game. Creature number 19, another colorless edition. We have Scuttlemutt. It's a 2/2 scarecrow that we can tap to add 1 mana of any color, or we can tap it and target creature becomes the color or colors of our choice until end of turn. So if we're thinking about any creatures on our side of the battlefield that have protection from a certain color, turning Scuttlemutt sideways allows us to make sure that the creature it's blocking is the color of our protection. And lastly, we have our 20th creature to add. It is Sea Drake, mono blue. It is a 4/3 flyer, and when it ETBs, we return 2 target lands we control to their owner's hand. And remember, those lands that are going back into their hands are going to slow down our opponents because you can only play 1 land per turn in Momir Vig. And there you have it, MTG BC. 20 more creature cards with CMC of 3 heading right into our cube. Which are your favorites? Let me know in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.